Hi there, this is Computer Science 30S, Liberty Basic portion, and today we're going to be looking at parallel arrays, and I believe this is lesson 8. Okay, let's jump right in. Parallel arrays. The following arrays represent data from a phone book database. Notice that the arrays do not all contain the same type of data. I'm just going to scroll down here so you can see. It's often necessary to represent data in a table form, such as shown below. Such data can be stored using parallel arrays. So what I was talking about before was that I've got different types of data here. I've got names, Bob Jeffries. I've got a phone number, which would actually be a string because of the hyphen there, I suppose. It's got an address. It's got a postal code. If it had some other kind of number, perhaps that might be an actual numerical value. These are all actually strings, I guess, but there certainly could contain numbers. There could contain other types of data that you haven't learned about yet, really. So it's a table form kind of thing. Parallel arrays are simply several arrays with the same number of elements that work together to organize the data. And there are 4 parallel arrays below. And those arrays are name, phone, address, and postal code. And I guess these should probably be strings because they do contain strings. Generally, you will be dealing with strings. The only time you might not be, might be when you be dealing with a number that you have to actually add or subtract, maybe like a grade in class or something like that. So these are 4 individual arrays, and they are linked together. Okay, each array has a dimension of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they are organized together. And it's the index that matters here. It's on the next page, yes. The advantage of parallel arrays is that each array may be of a different data type. It could be numeric or string. And the number that represents the position in the array is called the index. And you probably know that already from arrays. For example, here, if name string sub 3, which is Ron Smith, 1, 2, 3, number 3 is the index. Note that all of Ron Smith's data is in index 3. So in other words, let me just scroll down here. Ron Smith is in spot number 3, index number 3, that's his name. This is Ron's phone number, this is Ron's address, and this is his postal code. And if you were to insert a new person into spot number 3, then all of that data would have to move over, type of thing. Somehow I have Sandra Thomas living at Ron Smith as her address. So there's a mistake there already that I just spotted. The parallel arrays are very useful because they keep all of that data together, and they're all linked by the index number 3. You can sort them, you can search them, that type of thing that you're going to learn about in the future. So here's an assignment. I've actually simplified it considerably from the way that it used to be done. So I've created a program that uses read data, and I haven't shown you this yet. I'm going to just show you right in the program. It's just an easy way to get data in. I'm not going to really worry about it too much. In this day and age, we really don't do it that way. But it's a nice way for me to sort of get the data in quick for you. So we're going to use read data to read the name of several students and their marks, much like a school gradebook might export to a text file. So for example, in the office, they might ask the secretary to export all of the gradebook, all of the students' marks. So I want you to edit the program to allow the awards committee to run the program and determine who has honors based on certain criteria. And I'm going to show you that criteria right now. So it should use 3 separate arrays. I've set it up for you to begin with, one for names and one for average marks. I've got those 2 in there. You should create another array called honors or something like that that determines or that uses stores a string whether the student has honors or not. The program will read the data supplied. I've already got that for you. You don't have to type it in. Each student may have up to 5 marks, but they must have at least 3 to be considered for honors. So they can't have 2 marks, say 100%, and get honors. They have to have at least 3. The program is also required to allow the user to input the cutoff average for honors, usually something like 80%. So if you get a greater than 80, you get honors. But we want that to be able to be flexible, and the user can input that. It will then print a list of all the students, their average, and if they have honors, it will show the word honors. If not, it will have a blank space beside them. So let's just have a look at the program that I've set up for you, and you should be able to download this as well. Notice all of the wonderful comments on the right-hand side to help you understand the program. It took me all of about 90 seconds to put in. So we set up our arrays, name, string, and average. I've set them up to be 100. I've only got 10, but that just means that you can expand. Index equals 1. That's obviously starting in spot number 1. And we get the first name. So we've got read name string. This is something you haven't seen yet. So what we're doing is way down here at the bottom, we've got all these data statements. So read simply the command it looks for the word data and it reads the first thing. In this case, it's the word Sam in quotations, and it reads it into read name string. Now, a little weird note here about read. Read cannot read directly into an array. It must be read into a variable first. So you have to actually read it into a variable. I call it read name string, and you'll see that it gets put into the array a little bit later. I set up a loop that's going to continue until read name string is equal to done, because I've used the word done to end my data. Okay, so I'm going to do this entire loop. Notice the indentation. Do this loop until read name string is equal to done. So the first thing I do is I set my number of marks equal to 0. I set the total of the marks back to 0, and I read the mark. The first mark here is Sam's mark. It's a 70. Okay. Read simply, once it's read Sam, it has a little pointer. It keeps track of where it was in the list, and the next time it encounters a read, it just reads the next thing in the list. So I'm going to read that 70. While that mark is greater than -1, the -1 indicates the end of a student's marks. So I read the mark. While it's bigger than -1, I'm going to increase or bump the number of marks by 1. And I'm going to add that mark to my total. Total equals total plus mark. And then I'm going to read the next mark. In this case, it's the 80. End of loop. I go back and see if the mark that I just read is the -1. It's not. So I go back and add my number of marks by 1, and I add the total. And I continue that until I get to the -1. And once I read the -1, I go back to the top. I realize it's not greater than -1, so I stop my loop, and I calculate my average. And I store the average subindex. So remember, index is equal to 1. Sam is in 1, so Sam's average goes into spot number 1, and his average is determined by the total divided by the number of marks. Okay, I've kept track of how many marks there are. I then store Sam's name in spot number 1 of the name string. Sam's name is stored in read name string, and I move to the next spot in the array by bumping my index by index plus 1. I read the next name. Notice that happened at the bottom of the loop here. I read the next name, and I check to see if it's done or not. If it's done, then I stop. If it's not, then I go back and I repeat all over again. You will notice that some of these students don't have the same number of marks, and that's why I use this while loop in here. So what this is going to do is it's going to read all those marks. When I'm all done, number of names is equal to index -1. Because I bumped my index plus 1, I read the word done, I have to subtract 1 here. Common mistake that people make. You're going to run out of data if you don't. Sometimes you could, if you want, just to put something like this, so that if you do run into that error, then there's something there, but it shouldn't actually have to happen. Okay, so then the last loop here, I've got number of names equals index -1. I've explained that. For count equals 1 to number of names, so I'm just going to set up a loop here, and I'm going to print a person's name, and I'm going to print their average. Okay, let me show you how this works. I just had to pause there to make sure that it was actually working. Okay, so when I click run, all it does is it prints out the students' names and their averages. Okay, so this is the starter version. You should be able to go from here. If you want to see what my completed version looks like, hang on here. I'm going to show you that. If you want to get started, go right ahead and do that. Okay, so here I've got my completed version. The only thing that I'm going to show you is that you should have a third array. I called it honors, but you can call it whatever you want. And when you run it, it's going to ask me for my cutoff for honors, and let's say the cutoff is 50. Well, let's make it nice and easy. And you will notice that, oh, I got a problem in mine, looks like. Sam has honors, Justice does not have honors. He's got a 55.5. Actually, what might be the problem is that Justice doesn't have enough courses. I don't know. He might be ineligible. So this is what it should look like. If you want to do a little bonus thing here, it might be nice just for the user to put in something here. Honors, you might want to put something in there like if you had like not eligible or something like that, even though they've got greater than 50%, you might want to have a little word there that shows that they're not eligible based on the number of marks. So that's what it should look like. I was actually surprised how easy it was. It only took me about 10 minutes to do, and I really only had to add about 5 or 6 lines kind of thing. So it shouldn't take you too long. Good luck with that, and then we will move on next lesson.